Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Discover Your Dreams. This space is rooted in the grounded life philosophy, where inner peace becomes the foundation for purposeful living. Here, we focus on regulation, awareness, and conscious self-leadership as a way of returning to ourselves and meeting life from a grounded place. Before we begin today, let's take one slow, deep breath together. Breathe in and exhale slowly. Notice your body, because what we're talking about today is something that doesn't always make sense at first, but once you experience it, you won't forget it. Today, we're exploring what changes when you stop forcing outcomes. Most of us have been taught, directly or indirectly, that if something matters, we should push for it, work for it, figure it out, or make it happen. And effort does have its place. It's how we learn, how we grow, how we participate in our own lives. But there's a point where effort quietly crosses a line and becomes force. And force feels like pressure, urgency, overthinking, constant mental engagement. It feels like gripping too tightly, like trying to manage every variable, like attempting to control something that was never meant to be fully controlled in the first place. Force is the mind saying, if I don't hold this together, everything will fall apart. But often, the opposite is true. The more we push, the more things tense up. The more we chase, the further away ease seems to move. There's a different way, one that doesn't abandon effort, but balances it with trust, timing, and a little room for life to meet us halfway. When you force an outcome, something subtle happens in your nervous system. It tightens. Your attention narrows. Your body stays alert. Everything in you starts organizing around one message: I need this to happen. And that message carries weight. It pulls your energy forward. It creates a kind of internal bracing, like you're preparing for impact, or trying to outrun a feeling you don't want to meet. Because underneath it, there's often something quieter, more tender, and far more honest. I need this to feel okay. That's the part we rarely acknowledge, the part that believes safety lives in the outcome, the part that thinks relief will arrive only when things go a certain way, the part that's trying so earnestly to protect you from disappointment, uncertainty, or loss. Force isn't just about pushing circumstances. It's about trying to soothe something inside you that feels unsettled. And noticing that is the beginning of a very different kind of power, one rooted not in gripping, but in understanding, not in urgency, but in presence. This is where everything we've talked about begins to weave together. From regulation, when the body doesn't feel safe, it instinctively reaches for control. It tries to manage, predict, and contain whatever feels uncertain. From awareness, when we're not paying attention to what's happening inside us, we assume the pressure is necessary. We mistake tension for responsibility. We confuse urgency with importance. From detachment, when we're attached to a specific outcome, we grip instead of trust. We hold on tightly because we believe our well-being depends on things unfolding a certain way. And when all three of these patterns show up at the same time, forcing starts to feel normal. It becomes the default, the familiar rhythm of how we move through the world. But normal doesn't mean aligned. Normal just means practiced. Normal means repeated often enough that it feels like truth. Alignment is something different, quieter, steadier, and rooted in a deeper sense of safety and trust. And noticing the difference is the first step towards choosing it. There was a time in my life when I genuinely believed that if I didn't actively hold something together, it would fall apart. So I stayed involved, mentally, emotionally, constantly. I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was being committed. I thought my vigilance was proof of how much I cared. But what I was actually doing was forcing, trying to manage timing, trying to influence outcomes. trying to make things happen faster than they were ready to happen. And the more I pushed, the more resistance I felt. Not from the outside world at first, but from inside myself. My body was tired in a way that rest didn't fix. My mind was crowded with thoughts that never seemed to resolve. Everything felt slightly out of reach, slightly off-center. Nothing felt clear. It was like living in a constant low-level hum of effort, a background tension I had grown so used to that I mistook it for normal. Only later did I realize that nothing was actually falling apart. I was just holding on so tightly that I couldn't feel the natural rhythm of things. I couldn't sense what was unfolding on its own. I couldn't trust the parts of life that didn't need my constant supervision, and that realization changed everything. The realization came slowly, almost quietly. Not in a single moment of clarity, but in small observations that began to add up. I started to notice that nothing I was forcing was actually moving. There was effort, yes. There was intensity. There was constant mental activity. But there was no real progress. It just felt like movement. And that's an important distinction. Force can mimic momentum. It can create the sensation of doing something meaningful, of being in control, of staying on top of things, of not letting anything slip. But sensation isn't the same as truth. Force creates the feeling of control, a kind of temporary illusion that if you push hard enough, you can bend life to your will, but doesn't create the reality of alignment. Alignment has a different texture, quieter, steadier, more cooperative. It doesn't strain, it doesn't chase, it doesn't grip. And once you start to feel the difference, you can't unsee it. The shift wasn't dramatic. There was no big announcement, no sudden turning point. I didn't walk away. I didn't stop caring. I didn't abandon what mattered to me. I just stopped gripping. I loosened the internal fist I didn't even realize I'd been making. I allowed space. Space for breath, space for perspective, space for things to unfold without my constant supervision. I returned to my body, to the sensations I had been overriding in the name of trying. I focused on what was actually in front of me, not the future I was trying to drag closer, and what happened next surprised me. Things began to move. Not in a rushed way, not in a forced way, but in a natural, organic, almost effortless way. Not because I made them move, not because I strategized or pushed or micromanaged, but because I stopped interfering. I stopped blocking the very flow I was trying so hard to create. I stopped confusing tension with progress, and in that softening, life had room to breathe again. When you stop forcing outcomes, 3 really meaningful shifts start to happen. Not all at once, and not dramatically, but noticeably. First, your nervous system regulates. The first thing you feel is a softening. Your body isn't braced anymore. You're not internally leaning forward, trying to make something happen. And when your body settles, your perception widens. You can actually take in what's happening instead of reacting to what you fear might happen. It's like going from tunnel vision to a wider, calmer view of your life. Second, your thinking clears. When the urgency drops, the mind stops looping. It's not spinning scenarios or rehearsing conversations or trying to solve problems that don't exist yet. And in that quiet, something beautiful happens. You start seeing options you couldn't see before. Clarity returns, not because you chased it, but because you finally created the space for it to land. And third, your energy changes. Instead of reaching outward with pressure, your energy settles inward. It becomes grounded, steady, less frantic. And from that grounded place, your actions shift too. They become more effective, not because you're doing more, but because what you are doing is aligned. Not rushed, not forced, just true. There's a deeper principle at work here, one that most of us feel long before we ever put words to it. Life doesn't just respond to what you want. It responds to the state you're living from. When you're forcing, your internal state is shaped by urgency, lack, and pressure. And those states color everything. They influence how you think, how you act, how you interpret what's happening around you. They make you reactive instead of receptive, tense instead of open. But when you stop forcing, something shifts inside you. Your state begins to move toward trust, stability, and expectancy. And that shift changes the way you show up. You make different choices. You notice different opportunities. You communicate differently. You move through the world with a steadier kind of presence. From that state, things begin to organize differently, not magically. This isn't about bypassing effort or waiting for life to deliver everything to your doorstep, but naturally, because you're no longer working against yourself. You're no longer sending mixed signals, wanting something while simultaneously bracing for it not to happen. When your internal state aligns with what you're calling in, life has a way of meeting you with a little more ease. Think about something in your life you've been trying to make happen. A goal, a conversation, a decision, a shift. Anything that's been sitting on your heart or mind. Now ask yourself, honestly and without judgment, does this feel like movement or does this feel like pressure? Movement has a certain ease to it. Even when it's challenging, it feels like you're being carried forward. Pressure feels different. It's tight. It's urgent. It's fueled by the belief that if you stop pushing, everything will stall. Just noticing the difference is powerful. It tells you whether you're aligned with what you want or bracing against the fear of not getting it. There was another moment in my life when I made a very intentional choice to stop forcing. Not because I was giving up, not because I didn't care anymore, but because I could feel the tension in my body telling me the truth before my mind was ready to hear it. So I stepped back. I grounded myself. I let my nervous system settle. And I returned from my day-to-day life without constantly checking, thinking, or trying to manage the outcome from every angle. I didn't disconnect from what mattered. I just stopped hovering over it. And within a surprisingly short time, things began to align in ways I hadn't anticipated. Conversations unfolded naturally. Opportunities opened without me pushing for them. Decisions that once felt tangled suddenly became clear. But what stood out most was this. Everything that felt complicated under pressure became simple without it. The situation didn't change overnight. I changed. And that shift created space for life to move in ways my forcing never could. Letting go of force can feel uncomfortable. Not because it's wrong, but because it removes something we've relied on for a long time. The illusion of control. And without that illusion, the nervous system has to learn something new, something softer, something steadier. It has to learn trust. Trust in timing, even when the timing isn't yours to dictate. Trust in yourself, even when old patterns tell you to brace. Trust in the process of life unfolding, even when you can't see the whole path yet. It's a different kind of strength, one that doesn't come from gripping, but from allowing. Let me ask you something. Where in your life are you currently trying to make something happen? Not in a judgmental way, just honestly noticing. A relationship, a decision, a goal, a timeline. Anything you've been mentally holding on to. And if you pause for a moment and actually feel into it, does it feel grounded? Like steady movement? Like clarity? Like you're in your body? Or does it feel pressured, tight, urgent, like you're bracing without even realizing it? If you're comfortable, share one word in the comments below. Sometimes simply naming the energy is the first step to shifting it. It brings awareness to what's been running in the background, and awareness is what creates room for change. Let's try something together. Bring that situation to mind, the one you've been holding, managing, or thinking about on repeat. Just let it come into your awareness without trying to fix it. Now imagine your hands holding it tightly. Feel the tension in that grip. Notice how your body responds when you picture yourself clenching around it. Now, slowly, very slowly, imagine loosening your grip. Not dropping it, not walking away from it, just loosening. Give yourself one slow breath. Let your shoulders soften a little. Feel the space that opens when you stop bracing. Notice your body now. Notice the shift, even if it's subtle. That softening, that tiny release, is where alignment begins. It's the doorway out of force and into something steadier, clearer, and far more supportive. You don't have to force life to move. You really don't. What you do have to do is create the conditions where movement becomes possible. And those conditions aren't external, they're internal. When you regulate your system, when you come back into your body instead of living in your mind, when you become aware of the patterns that keep you in urgency, when you loosen your attachment to needing the outcome to make you feel okay, something shifts. Life begins to respond differently, not because you're pushing it, but because you're no longer blocking it. When your internal state softens, your external world has room to reorganize. And that's when things start to unfold with the kind of ease that force could never create. Forcing outcomes doesn't create clarity. It creates pressure. And pressure has a way of tightening everything: your thoughts, your body, your perspective. It clouds what you're trying to see. But when you return to yourself, when you soften the urgency, when you loosen the grip you didn't even realize you were holding, something shifts. What's meant to move often does, not because you pushed harder, but because you finally created the space for clarity and movement to emerge on their own. You don't have to push life forward. You really don't. Life has its own rhythm, its own timing, its own way of unfolding when you're not tightening around it. When you stop forcing the outcome, you create the space for things to move in their own natural direction, not because you've stepped away, but because you've stepped out of the way. And that space, that softening, that openness is often all life needs to begin shifting. I'll see you next time.